My name is Tim Grady. I'm from the Lawton Seventh-day Adventist Church in Lawton, Oklahoma. I'm recording this because a friend of mine just died, and I'm going to go over a few topics. One, I am a former funeral director, so I would like to talk about methods acceptable by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, why, and how everything works. With that, I will get into just a little bit of funeral planning. I will get into why you need 10 death certificates when someone dies, preparing your paperwork for the living. I will remind people that funerals are not for the dead. They are for the living. So, I've tried this 3 times so far. Hopefully I get this one right. I'm going to share my screen. There it goes. How small, I'll pull me down. Okay, let's start up here. This is the Seventh-day Adventist Biblical Research Institute official policy on cremation, embalming, and any other form, simplified so everyone can understand what the actual belief is. So here it goes. And by the way, I'm going to ask a very hard question right now. Are you ready for your probation to close right now? Because that is what just happened to my friend. You know, we talk about it a lot, but are you ready? It's one thing to be waiting for the close of the Seventh-day Adventist probation, little time of trouble. But this is reality right now. Are you ready? So this is a wake-up call, but it is also a video going through all of these little subjects. I'll start with this first paragraph, and here we go.
Written by George W. Reed. Location, Biblical Research Institute. Is cremation an acceptable Christian method of dealing with the dead? Responding to your inquiry, Adventists have never taken a position on cremation because our understanding of death/resurrection makes the matter not significant. The God who created us is equally capable of recreating us from ashes of incineration or from ashes the result of slow decay. All things organic return to their basic elements, the real difference being only how long it takes. In fact, we do not hold that in the resurrection the new person will be composed of the same atoms of which he was previously formed. Atoms disperse, and restoring the person is a matter not of reassembly of atoms but of expressing the creative power of God, whatever atoms are involved. We know also that every living person is a conduit for new atoms entering and old ones dispersing, so that to a large degree any person will be composed in 10 years of an almost entirely different set of atoms. The person remains in the mind of God, and through his creative power he will restore to what he wishes, even a new body untouched by the power of sin.
Okay, let's unpack this. Basically, it says God is going to create us anew. If we have our beliefs that this corrupted body, mine, yours, and everyone else's, must die on this earth and be burned in the purifying fire of the return of Jesus Christ. And I'll leave it there. I don't want to get too deep into that. That's a whole nother subject we can do another day. But this is why we don't matter how you, if you bury at sea, it doesn't matter if they're evaporated in a plasma explosion. It doesn't matter if you are, how you die, what you die, how you die, and what happens after your body. This next paragraph is kind of important because this is where some people say, oh no, we cannot do this. But let's listen to what the church has come to an understanding of.
Some have used Amos 2:1 to oppose the practice of cremation. The prophet states that God is angered against Moab because he burned, as if to lime, the bones of Edom's king. The main interpretational problem in this text is the phrase as if to lime, which in Hebrew reads literally to lime. The noun sid does not mean ashes but lime. Lime was used to plaster walls and stones. Some have suggested that in this particular case the bones were burned or calcined to obtain lime. Be that as it may, it is clear that Moab is condemned because of its inhuman treatment of human remains. Therefore the prophet is condemning an act of hatred and severe vindictiveness that resulted in the devaluation of human dignity. This was not what we would call cremation. Cremation, properly speaking, could be a pious act. 1 Sam 31:11-13 relates how the Israelites took the body of Saul and his sons from the wall of Beth-shan and went to Jabesh, where they burned them. This was not an act of vengeance but a proper way of disposing of a human corpse.
I don't want to get too deep into this subject, but we will finish the last two paragraphs now.
I recognize that to a few persons the matter of burial rather than cremation is important. They note that cremation is followed in pagan countries such as India and China. As a matter of fact, these vastly overpopulated countries long ago confronted occupation of scarce fertile land by cemeteries, by embedding in their religion a tradition of burning, this explained in terms of the purifying power of fire. Scientifically, we see advantage in the prevention of infection. Most often death takes place in the presence of severe illness, and in most pagan countries death comes from infectious disease, not the degenerative conditions that plague us in the West. Of course, we have absolutely no interest in pagan practices for their own sake, but when measured by our understanding of how God works, something like burning would create no problem. It is true that in Jewish tradition the dead always were buried, a custom written into Catholic canon law and thus perpetuated in the Christian community. Today approximately half those who die in the U.S. are cremated, generally because of the expense involved. Cremation can cost only 10% of what a full burial funeral will be. In the end, it often is the dollar that rules, especially in the absence of strong opinions. We are allowing each member to follow his conscience in this matter, and for the reasons given above are not likely to take a church position on it.
Okay, now I'm going to have to go back into the 28 fundamental beliefs. Let's click here. I know where it's at here. There we are. Okay, we're going to go down here to one of the 28 fundamental beliefs that I have not yet gotten to publishing. Okay, we're going to go into stewardship. And we're going to read what stewardship is.
We are God's stewards, entrusted by Him with time and opportunities, abilities and possessions, and the blessings of the earth and its resources. We are responsible to Him for their proper use. We acknowledge God's ownership by faithful service to Him and our fellow human beings, and by returning tithe and giving offerings for the proclamation of His gospel and the support and growth of His church. Stewardship is a privilege given to us by God for nurture in love and the victory over selfishness and covetousness. Stewards rejoice in the blessings that come to others as a result of their faithfulness.
Okay, we're not going to go too much more into it, but we are going to talk about as stewardship as how we handle our money. Funerals can be very expensive. Okay, there are a lot of shady practices. In the funeral industry. Caskets, where you can go buy your own casket and force the funeral home to use it. But if you have not pre-planned, this is a phrase that comes from me in the military, proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. So take that to heart. If you're doing, my friend died 100 miles from home. He died in a major hospital. We live in Lawton, Oklahoma. He was air flighted to Oklahoma City. I don't want to go into too many details, but he died in Oklahoma City. 110, 120 miles, 100 plus miles away from here. It is. It is what it is. In most communities, most states, an ambulance cannot remove the dead body. That is a special contract. So they would remove the body. They will either take it to a funeral home if the coroner has already approved, like in an attended death in a hospital. You can go straight to the funeral home and be cremated. That is the least expensive option. And I'm going to hit you with the hard facts. Most places in the United States, to have a body removed with the new regulations and all the regulations that are put on the removal company or removal contractor, which sometimes it's a funeral home, sometimes it is a specific contractor that does nothing but body removal. And whether there is a coroner hold or not a coroner hold is where the body goes. Each one of these steps, if it's an unattended death, the coroner may want to come look at it, or it may be brought to the coroner's body. So you're now going to have two charges, removal charges, removal from either the hospital, the home, or location of death. And then you will have it to the coroner's office while they investigate whether it is a natural or unnatural death or a homicide or what to go. Then you get it released, and then you can take it to the facility to be cremated, whether it be a funeral home or a specific company that supplies nothing but cremation services. They may also do cremation of medical waste. So this is what happens. At minimum, you're looking at $2,000 today to cremate a body in most places. There are exceptions in small rural areas where you know the funeral home, you know where the crematorium is, and you've made proper prior plans. A minimal funeral, embalming, you still have the same removal costs. You now have a casket cost of anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 and up. And oftentimes they'll hit you with $10,000 for a casket that you can purchase for around $800 to $1,500. That is why talking about this subject prior to someone's death is very needed. And if you're going through embalming, there is a minimum of $3,000 to $5,000 charge. So now you see how a funeral can go from cremation $2,000 to $3,000. If you have the coroner's hold and a few other things, you can get up into the $4,000 to $5,000. If you are dealing with the same removal process, instead of to the crematorium, you are now going to the trade embalmer, which can be within the funeral home or not within the funeral home. They can bring somebody from the outside or not from the inside. I know I'm getting into a lot of inside politics on, in how to make the sausage, so to speak, of the funeral industry. But proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Figure out what you want to do. In fact, we had this exact discussion with this man within the last week. So his wife knew his wishes clearly. So they will have less heartache and pain. They will miss him dearly. I will miss him. But I am waiting to see him in the clouds of glory or in heaven. He died in the faith. So that gives me hope. 99% of the people that I buried, we will not be seeing in heaven. Just the facts of, and someone that dies in faith, we are to look at them as saved. We are to be happy for them. And it gives us peace in our eventual death or translation if we live through to the end times. So, are you ready today? 5 days ago, he didn't think he was going to be dying. So are you ready today? Potentially this minute. Have you gotten your relationship with Jesus Christ ready? Okay, now I'm going to get on back to the subject of planning. You need 10 death certificates, minimum. I will explain why and what I have done for my wife when I die. She is to get 10 death certificates. The first death certificate is for Social Security. The second death certificate is for military deers, because I am still VA disability. She needs another one for VA disability. We have 3 insurance policies, so that is now 6 death certificates. You need a death certificate for the funeral home. You need a death certificate for other needs that you don't even know yet. My wife will go through 8 and have 1 for permanent records. That is why I need 10 death certificates. I do not recommend anyone get less than 10 at the initial request. If you don't get them at the initial request and get enough of them to at least cover the first few things like insurance, policies, and home loans, if you have a mortgage on your home, you have to have that death certificate. So there would be you would now be over 10 or 15 death certificates. And there are death certificates needed that, like I said, you have no concept for. So having too many death certificates is never a problem. Not having enough and having to wait sometimes up to 6 months, because in some states you have the initial release that you request, and then you have to go through and request them, and they get to them when they get to them. Oklahoma, if you did not get it in the initial request, can take 3 weeks. We're fast. Colorado, depending on what county you were in and all of the rest of it, that could take 2 to 3 months. If you're in one of the more populated counties, Wisconsin, initially they will only give you so many, and then that's another thing. Some states will only give you so many, and the people need certified copies. They do not need copies of a certified copy, or they do not need a copy that is done by a notary public. That most places will not accept that. So you need at least 10 death certificates. I know this is a lot of things to think about, but if you properly plan for this, you're not going to have as many problems. You're not going to put as much stress on the living. Again, funerals are for the living, not for the dead. And back to stewardship and the 28 fundamental beliefs. We are God's stewards, entrusted by Him with time and opportunities and abilities, possessions. And this is where it's talking about. And I'm going to expand upon stewardship. Bankrupting yourself, losing a home, and all the other things because you didn't plan to have a less expensive funeral. And every step you add to this, so in other words, you have an open casket viewing, that can add $1,000 to $1,500. If you have a gravesite, that can add $2,000, $3,000. A gravesite, I mean, you start adding it up, and you can be in $30,000, $40,000 instantly. Instantly, without even thinking about it. So plan how you're going to do it. Get with the minister. Get with your pastor. Get with your elders. Prepare them. I do not know what a typical donation fee is to the person that officiates. It used to be $400. I think it's now closer to $1,000 as a typical to the person that officiates. So, I mean, when you start looking at all of these things, it gets complicated fast. So plan ahead. And it doesn't matter what you do, because you can put them in a cardboard cylinder. You can dump the ashes. You can bring the ashes home. You can put it into a whatever you want. You can put that cardboard cylinder into another container. You can dump the ashes out. There are ways you can dump the ashes. There are places you can go do it. You can do it on somebody's property, but you better look at the EPA regulations on that and the state regulations, city regulations. But once there are very little regulations on once the body is burned, you are very open to what you can do with it. So that's what I'm opening with. And again, this is the question. There are other things I'd like to talk about, but maybe another time. Are you ready right now? Is your relationship with Jesus Christ ready right now for your probation to end this minute? That is the question I have. And if not, please get with God. Get your relationship. Get your relationship right with God. I know I've only scratched the surface on what it is, how it is. When someone dies, it's not the time to put the family and the living in financial desperations. By the way, a funeral home gets paid before the IRS. There are very good reasons for that, and I will not go into that right now. But a funeral home, funeral removal contractors get paid before the IRS, before whatever bank loans. They take priority. And there are very good reasons for that, which I am not going to go into now. But again, are you prepared to meet Jesus Christ, risen in the clouds of glory right now? That if you die right now, are you ready? So that's what I have out here.